Have you ever felt the urge to check if someone who hurt you is finally getting what they deserve? You stay silent, you move on, but somewhere deep down, a part of you still wonders, did life catch up to them? The truth is, karma doesn't always make noise. It doesn't come with fireworks or public breakdowns. It moves in silence, in private moments, in ways no one sees, but they feel. And today, we're going to reveal those quiet signs. Not so you can gloat, but so you can finally let go. The Stoics never taught us to chase revenge. They taught us to reclaim our peace, to let time and nature do their work while we do ours, building strength, clarity, and a life that cannot be touched by betrayal. So if you've ever been wronged and stayed quiet, this is your confirmation. Stay with me to the very end, because what you learn today may finally set your heart free. And if you're ready to transform pain into power, hit the like button, subscribe, and let's walk this Stoic path together.
Number 1.
Fake happiness screams loudest. People who carry guilt often imagine that sheer volume can drown a conscience. They flood social feeds with forced laughter, dramatic sunsets, and captions that insist their life has never been brighter. Yet beneath every gleaming filter, the mind keeps score, and each overshared smile is an affidavit of unrest. The Stoics warned us, the soul that is well-ordered moves quietly. Seneca put it bluntly. A good conscience welcomes the crowd but needs none. When someone has harmed you and refuses to own the wound, the very performance of happiness betrays them. Consider Elizabeth Holmes, once celebrated as the next Steve Jobs. While Theranos was already collapsing behind closed doors, she doubled down on black turtleneck interviews, widened eyes, and a rehearsed certainty that bordered on prophecy. Each stage appearance felt like an infomercial for her own bliss. Investors applauded, journalists scribbled, but inside sealed court documents, a darker story accumulated. Faulty machines, falsified tests, employees bound by silence. Holmes needed no public enemy to bring her down. The weight of her own performance broke the stage. In the end, karma didn't roar. It simply revealed the truth she tried to bury beneath a smile. Now shift the lens to everyday life. Remember the colleague who publicly dismissed your idea, only to spend the next month arriving early with pastries no one asked for, and tagging the entire department in chirpy quotes about teamwork. He is not suddenly generous, he is haunted. His cheerfulness is camouflage knitted in panic, Marcus Aurelius reminded himself. The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. Notice how that guidance frees you from policing his behavior. You need not confront him, expose him, or even hope for an apology. Your calm leaves his performance standing alone, glaringly artificial. Why do humans perform happiness when they feel the opposite? Because guilt is a vacuum that demands noise. It cannot survive stillness. When the wrongdoer sits alone, the inner dialogue grows fangs, so they keep the music up, the group chats buzzing, the calendar packed. Epictetus told his students, "No man is free who is not master of himself." A life built on distraction is already a sentence. It trades authentic joy for temporary escape from self-reproach. The louder the laugh track, the hollower the room feels when the music stops. There is also an austere symmetry to the universe. What you fake externally, you forfeit internally. Pretending to be content prevents you from becoming content, because becoming requires honesty. Think of comedian Jim Carrey, who admitted that his most extravagant public antics were armor against private despair. Only when he stopped performing non-stop cheer did real healing begin. The moment the show ends, karma speaks in the hush. Every exaggerated grin is both a signal flare and a self-inflicted burn. You, meanwhile, must decide where to place your attention. The Stoic path insists that we govern our own mind, not theirs. Instead of scrolling through their curated paradise, zoom out, ask, what does this performance teach me about the human need for authenticity? How can I refine my own character so that my joy is silent enough to be real? In doing so, you convert their unraveling into a private workshop, extracting fuel from what could have been poison. Take Oprah Winfrey's response to betrayal by a close friend who tried to sell a private story. She chose no public spectacle. She poured her energy into work, audience, and mission. Years later, the friend apologized, and Oprah accepted it with a quiet nod. Karma had finished its lesson long before the apology surfaced. By staying devoted to her purpose, Oprah demonstrated how turning an obstacle into opportunity renders retaliation obsolete. Yet let us be clear, noticing fake happiness is not about keeping score. The point is release. When you see the telltale signs, overdone captions, constant humble bragging, or manufactured group selfies, you can breathe out. Life is handling what you were tempted to handle yourself, Marcus again writes. Time is a sort of river of passing events, and strong is its current. That current is sweeping them toward truth. Your only task is to keep your vessel steady. Therefore, the next time your mind drifts toward the person who wronged you, picture them rehearsing smiles in a mirror before dinner, terrified of the quiet that waits after dessert. Recognize that this is the universe's gentle justice at work, more precise than any scheme you could design. Then, with the composure of James the Stoic, return to your craft, your family, your evening walk. Let your happiness be so genuine it requires no audience, no caption, no applause. In that simplicity, you experience the freedom they merely pretend to possess. In conclusion, fake happiness is karma's opening act. It whispers that something beneath the surface is unsettled, confirming what the Stoics always knew. That character, not performance, determines peace. Watch the show if you must, but only long enough to remember why you prefer the quiet stage of your own disciplined life. Close the curtain and keep moving, because the loudest proof that you are beyond their shadows, that you no longer need to look for it.
Number 2.
Life quietly takes back what was never respected. There is a peculiar justice in life, not loud, not vengeful, but exact. When someone disrespects what they've been given, your trust, your time, your kindness, life begins to subtract, not with violence, but with silence, not with punishment, but with precision. What was once taken for granted is slowly removed. Connections grow colder, opportunities fade, joy becomes elusive, and the person who thought they had it all finds themselves surrounded by things that no longer mean anything, because what is not honored will not last. The Stoics understood this deeply. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The things you think about determine the quality of your mind. Your soul takes on the color of your thoughts. When your thoughts are filled with disregard, arrogance, or manipulation, the quality of your inner world decays. And when the inner world collapses, the outer world follows. Life mirrors the soul. So when someone mistreats what they once begged to receive, they set in motion an invisible erosion of meaning, of love, of belonging. Think of the story of Lance Armstrong. He reached the pinnacle of fame, wealth, and adoration, but he disrespected the very thing that gave him that glory. The sport itself. Through deception and betrayal, he not only stained his name, but lost what made him powerful in the first place, trust. And when trust disappears, no amount of trophies or applause can fill the void. Karma didn't knock on his door overnight. It arrived as a slow unraveling, a step back here, a lost sponsor there, a reputation that decayed not in flames, but in dust. In your own life, you may see a quieter version of this. Someone who once thrived on manipulating others now finds their relationships growing shallow. They're surrounded by people, but feel alone. They speak, but no one truly listens. Their success remains on the outside, but inside it begins to rot, because respect is the foundation of all that lasts. Without it, everything becomes temporary. Friendship, love, even legacy. Seneca warned that a man who treats life like a game ends up defeated by his own play. And this is where karma enters. Not with drama, but with detachment. The person who once dismissed you as replaceable now finds themselves invisible. The invitations stop. The phone grows silent, not out of malice, but because their presence no longer brings peace. Life subtracts what they abused. But here's the crucial Stoic insight. You do not need to witness this. You do not need to track their losses, because what you truly reclaim is your focus. While their life becomes cluttered with silent consequences, yours becomes clean, free from their drama, free from needing closure. You begin to rise, not above them, but beyond them. Epictetus put it simply, seek not that events should happen as you will, but will them to happen as they do, and your life will go smoothly. That includes the timing of justice. Let it unfold without your interference. This idea plays out even in the personal stories of those like Maya Angelou. Betrayed, hurt, and silenced in her early life, she chose not to chase down those who wronged her. Instead, she built her power through words, poetry, teaching, and in doing so, those who dismissed her eventually faded into irrelevance. Not because she punished them, but because she elevated herself. Life took back what they misused, and in doing so, made room for her rise. When someone disrespects the sacred, whether it's love, truth, or loyalty, life does not scream at them. It simply stops speaking. It removes opportunities, closes doors, and dries up the joy they once consumed without gratitude. And while they may post smiles and pretend it's all fine, they know, deep down, they feel it. The emptiness creeps in. The silence grows. This is not revenge. It is reality correcting itself. So what do? You do not stare at their downfall like a spectator at a coliseum. You return to yourself. You take inventory of your values. You commit to honoring what you're given, your time, your relationships, your own peace. Because the more you respect what's yours, the less likely it is to be taken. You become the kind of person who keeps what matters because you don't misuse it. And in that state of clarity, something beautiful happens. You stop needing them to lose because you've already won. Not by fortune, not by luck, but by discipline. Karma is not about seeing them fall. It's about becoming someone who no longer watches. As Marcus Aurelius reminded himself every morning, just that you do the right thing, the rest doesn't matter. Let that be your compass. Let others face their quiet consequences. Let life subtract what they didn't treasure. Meanwhile, you add value to your own world by honoring what you have, so it multiplies. Because what's taken from those who don't respect it becomes available to those who do.
Number 3.
You live in their silence. Sometimes karma doesn't show up as destruction. It shows up as remembrance. A name they can't forget. A face they keep seeing in strangers. A moment replaying at midnight like a song stuck in their throat. The most undeniable form of karma is when you still occupy space in someone's mind, without ever needing to be there. You've exited their life, but they haven't left yours. Not because you're chasing closure, but because they're still chasing peace from what they did. The Stoics spoke often about the power of memory, but they warned us not to be trapped by the past. Epictetus said, "It is not things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them. And nothing disturbs a guilty mind more than the presence of someone they wronged who is now absent, who lives better, louder, and freer without them. You do not haunt them with words, you haunt them with your growth. You are the unspoken sentence they gave themselves. This is the kind of karma that whispers, it doesn't ruin their life, it echoes in it. And every time they hear about your success, your peace, your silence, it reminds them of what they lost. That is the quiet cost of betrayal. They gave up access to something rare, and the memory of that decision lingers far longer than any apology ever could. They don't miss you, they miss who they were when they were with you, and that version of them no longer exists. Consider Robin Williams. After a painful divorce, he was once asked whether he hated his ex-wife. He simply replied, "No, I just hope she's okay." That kind of detachment isn't weakness, it's elevation. He did not dwell, he did not seek revenge, and in that detachment, he became unforgettable. Because when someone walks away in dignity, they leave a mark deeper than rage ever could. That memory sticks, not because it hurts, but because it humbles. There's a psychological truth here as well. The brain remembers emotional intensity, not logic. So when you were deeply kind, genuinely loyal, or vulnerably honest with someone, and they chose to hurt you, the memory of that contrast burns. Long after the relationship ends, they recall how you didn't fight dirty, how you showed grace when you could have exploded. That memory doesn't fade, it sharpens, especially in the silence. Silence is not just absence, it is confrontation without words. Stoicism doesn't teach suppression, it teaches transformation, Marcus Aurelius reminded himself. Reject your sense of injury, and the injury itself disappears. But here's the twist. Just because you reject your sense of injury doesn't mean the other person does. They carry the weight you chose to drop. And that's karma, the unseen burden they must bear while you walk freely. You are no longer imprisoned by what happened. They still are. In personal life, you might know someone who cut you off or ghosted you suddenly, only to later orbit your life, liking old photos, sending you meaningless messages, asking mutual friends about you. That isn't curiosity, that's haunting. You are the silence they can't escape, because they expected chaos from you, but you gave them peace instead, and that peace became their punishment. You became the quiet they dread. Look at Maya Angelou again, who said, "People will forget what you said, they'll forget what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel." When you rise with grace, they remember. And what they remember is not your words, but their own actions. Your absence becomes a mirror. They look in and see themselves, and they don't like what they see. This is why you must not break your silence to remind them. Let life do that. Let their own mind be the echo chamber. Because when you go quiet, you don't disappear. You become part of their inner world. They run into you every time they try to enjoy the things they once shared with you. That coffee shop, that book, that song. It no longer tastes the same. They are no longer the same. The Stoics would remind us that being unforgettable is not the goal, but it is often the byproduct of living with virtue. Seneca advised, associate with people who are likely to improve you. But when someone betrays you and you leave quietly, they come to realize they didn't just lose a relationship, they lost an upgrade to their character, and you become a measuring stick they can never reach again. So if you wonder whether they think of you, the answer is yes. Not because you're chasing revenge, but because you've become the standard they broke. And now, in quiet moments, they relive the fracture. Karma doesn't need to scream, it just needs to remind. Let them remember, let them wrestle. You don't need to return, you don't need to correct the story. When you live well, you rewrite the story through action. Your peace says what your words never could. And in time, you'll realize this is the most beautiful form of justice. Not that they're punished, but that you're free. You are no longer held hostage by what happened, but they are still visited by the one person they can never reach again. Not because you vanished, but because you evolved. That is the karma of memory. That is the echo of silence. And that is the justice the Stoics trusted. Not the punishment of others, but the liberation of the self.
Number 4.
Guilt becomes paranoia. There's a specific kind of punishment that needs no judge and no courtroom. It lives inside the guilty. It doesn't begin with fear. It begins with a question. What if they find out who I really am? And from that moment forward, guilt quietly mutates into paranoia. You see it in their eyes when they flinch at kindness. You hear it in their voice when they over-explain things no one asked about. You feel it in their absence. Because guilt doesn't just make people remorseful, it makes them run. The Stoics understood this transformation well. Epictetus warned, "No man is free who is not master of himself," and guilt is the very evidence of a man not in control. At first, the person who wronged you believes they've gotten away with it. They justify, they blame, they minimize. But over time, the truth they buried starts to seep through the cracks of their behavior. They stop trusting others, not because others are dangerous, but because they themselves are. This is the irony of betrayal. The person who betrays doesn't just lose you, they lose their peace, because every lie they told you becomes a lie they now expect from others. Every manipulation they use now feels like a trap being set for them. They question everyone's motives because deep down, they know their own were corrupt. And so they live in a house of mirrors, seeing themselves in everyone, trusting no one. Take the example of Tiger Woods. His rise was built on perfection, discipline, and control. But once the truth of his personal life surfaced, something shifted, not just in public opinion, but in his presence. There was a visible weight, a caution that hadn't been there before. Even years after his apology, you could sense the guardedness. The once confident icon now moved more carefully, more reserved, not from shame alone, but from a deeper sense of being watched, exposed, vulnerable. That is paranoia born not from others, but from self-knowledge. In daily life, you'll notice this same pattern. A person who once gossiped about you suddenly grows quiet around mutual friends. The one who used to dominate conversations becomes oddly defensive over small talk. They aren't changing for the better. They're hiding because guilt, when unacknowledged, doesn't soften a person. It isolates them. Stoicism teaches us that truth brings alignment, but unspoken truth, that brings torment. Seneca wrote, "He who has done his best for himself has done his best for others." But someone living in guilt cannot do their best for themselves or anyone else. They're too busy checking their exits and second-guessing every interaction, interpreting kindness as manipulation, and reading silence as accusation. Guilt turns the world into a threat, and that's how karma works. Not through punishment, but through perception. The outside world stays the same, but their inner lens is forever altered. This is where your discipline matters, because it's tempting to want to confront them, to force a confession, to say, "I know what you did." But that need fades when you understand the Stoic truth. The guilty mind is its own prison. You don't have to remind them. Their nerves do it for you. Every unanswered text, every delayed call, every polite smile they force when your name comes up. They are all symptoms of a conscience unsettled. And perhaps the most cruel aspect of this karma is that it ruins connection. They cannot love fully because trust feels dangerous. They cannot relax because stillness feels like exposure. They surround themselves with distractions. But the moment silence arrives, so does the memory. Stoicism teaches us not to be swayed by externals, and this includes the illusions others put up to hide from themselves. You, on the other hand, must choose a higher posture. Don't look back, Don't look for signs. Just stay grounded in who you are, because the moment you chase their guilt, you hand them your peace. Remember what Marcus Aurelius said: waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one. Your clarity is not in their breakdown, it's in your own alignment. Think about Prince Harry. For years he carried grief, anger, and guilt, but only when he began to speak openly, to confront the pain rather than suppress it, did he begin to find direction, the lesson. Unaddressed pain mutates, but faced with honesty, it can transform. Most people who hurt others never get that far. They don't confess, they just withdraw. And in that withdrawal, karma does its work, not by breaking them, but by showing them what they've broken in themselves. So if someone who betrayed you now seems jittery, untrusting, or overly guarded, don't mistake that as growth. Recognize it for what it is: guilt rearranged into fear. They're not healed, they're haunted. They're not distant by choice. They're exiled by their own conscience. And nothing you say can add to what their own soul repeats to them day after day. This is karma, as the Stoics would describe it. Not divine punishment, but natural consequence. A soul at odds with itself cannot find peace, no matter how successful the exterior may seem. And as long as they avoid the truth, they walk with shadows only they can see. Let them, you. Keep your face toward the sun, speak with clarity, act with integrity, live so purely that your presence becomes its own rebuke. In doing so, you become untouchable, not because you seek revenge, but because you don't need it.
Number 5.
Life sends them someone just like them. There is no mirror sharper than another human being, and life, with its quiet sense of balance, often delivers the most ironic justice, not through punishment, but through repetition. A person who manipulates others eventually meets someone who manipulates them. The liar falls for a better liar. The one who played with hearts finds their own shattered, not by karma's rage, but by its symmetry. Life doesn't seek revenge. It simply holds up a mirror. The Stoics believed in nature's order, in the universe as an interwoven whole where actions ripple outward, returning not always in kind, but in consequence. Marcus Aurelius put it clearly: what happens to each of us is ordered by nature and beneficial to the whole. So when someone meets their match, not in a cruel way, but in a revelatory way, it's not because fate is angry, it's because fate is instructive. It shows them who they've been, through someone they can't escape. Take the case of Steve Jobs. Early in his career, he was known for his genius, but also for his intensity, arrogance, and sometimes harsh treatment of others. And yet, in the later chapters of his life, especially during his exile from Apple, he faced colleagues who dismissed him, criticized him, and treated him with the same lack of empathy he once dished out. In interviews, he later admitted that this period, though brutal, reshaped him, not because it broke him, but because it reflected him. Through the pain of being on the receiving end, he softened. He evolved. The mirror didn't shatter him, it taught him. This is karma's final act. Not vengeance, but education. It doesn't scream, "See how it feels." It whispers, "Look at what you've become." The person who once made others feel small now knows the quiet suffocation of being misunderstood. They meet someone who twists their words, dismisses their effort, or disappears without warning, and for the first time, they understand what they caused. It's not always dramatic, sometimes it's subtle. They fall in love with someone who love bombs and withdraws. They trust someone who keeps secrets. They open up to someone who uses their vulnerability against them. And slowly a realization forms, not out of shame, but recognition. They feel the very pain they once dismissed in others. The Stoics would not call this divine punishment. They'd call it alignment with logos, the rational structure of reality Epictetus said, "Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of things. And few things alter your view like being treated the way you once treated someone else." That's where real transformation begins. Not when someone punishes you, but when life imitates you. In everyday life, you might see this play out in someone who used to control others, now feeling anxious in a relationship where they have no control. Or someone who never listened now, craving to be heard and finding only silence. The discomfort they once overlooked becomes inescapable. They begin to empathize, not because they've become moral, but because they've become vulnerable. This is where Stoic wisdom becomes essential, because it's easy to feel satisfaction when this happens, to think, finally they're getting what they deserve. But Marcus Aurelius reminds us, the best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. Your role is not to gloat over their discomfort. Your role is to rise above it, to understand that this is not about your validation. It's about their evolution. Look at Robert Downey Jr. He once spiraled into self-destruction, hurting people, sabotaging his career. But in time, he encountered directors who no longer trusted him, studios who cut ties, friends who walked away. He saw his own chaos reflected back at him, and it was in that reflection, not in punishment, that he changed. He rebuilt, not because someone forced him, but because the mirror finally got through. This is the Stoic view of karma, not as superstition, but as consequence made visible. It's not about balance for the sake of fairness. It's about cause and effect. You become what you do, and eventually life surrounds you with versions of yourself, not to destroy you, but to awaken you, to show you that the pain you cause others is not abstract. It is very real, and now, very personal. So what do you do when someone who hurt you ends up with someone just like them? You let go, you stop watching, you don't track their drama, because now they are living in the same confusion, doubt, and heartache they once handed to you. And the moment you realize this, you free yourself, not from the memory, but from the need for resolution. They're already receiving their education. They're already reading the curriculum life wrote just for them. Let them learn, let them struggle, let them feel. And you rise, you protect your peace, you deepen your integrity. You become the kind of person who, when met with hurt, alchemizes it into strength. You become the proof that pain doesn't have to define you. It can refine you. Because what life brings them is not your burden to carry. Your work is inward. Your victory is silent. And the moment you stop checking whether they've learned their lesson, you start learning your own. How to release, how to grow, how to become the kind of person who no longer needs poetic justice to move forward. As Seneca said, it is the power of the mind to be unconquerable. Let that be your shield. Let that be your mirror. While they face themselves through others, you face yourself with courage, and you walk forward without bitterness, without revenge, only wisdom. Karma doesn't always make a scene. It doesn't always come with thunder or flames. Sometimes it shows up in silence, in solitude, in sleepless nights. The Stoics never asked us to chase revenge. They asked us to chase virtue, because when you live with discipline, clarity, and truth, life handles the rest. You don't need to watch them fall. You only need to rise. If this spoke to you, if you've ever been hurt and chose not to retaliate, but to rebuild, then you already understand the deeper justice at work. Let go of needing to be understood. Let your life speak for itself. If you found value in this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this message. Someone out there needs to hear it, maybe even today.